Welcome to BrandBusters with your hosts, James Schwinn and Sean Lee. Together, we bust open the latest in CPG, retail media, and life, or whatever the we want. And for today's episode, we got something special cooked up for ya. Extra spicy. Take it away, Sean.
Awesome. Welcome back, everybody, to the latest episode of BrandBusters. And we have a father-daughter duo today that founded a company that I think everybody's really going to enjoy the conversation with. It's Mike and Julia Rosinus, who are co-founders of the leading clean hydration brand GoHydrate. Combining Mike's experience in private equity and finance with Julia's brand building and big CPG experience, these two make for a dynamic father-daughter duo, and we're extremely excited to talk to them today. Thank you guys for both joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Well, to start, I think a lot of listeners may not know that the story of GoHydrate actually goes back a decade plus, going probably on 11 years now with Me Strength. So talk to us about the origin story of GoHydrate and really that pivot from what the brand originally was.
So I'll do this one, Julia. The origin was very simple. We had a colleague on Wall Street, which is where I worked my whole career, and he was a biochemist, and he had this little company that made a product. It was a powder. It had an ingredient in it that was called creatine. It's still out there as an ingredient. And it tasted really good, and it had these electrolytes, and it was an early stage thing that he didn't do anything with. So I said, my son and I were working with him. We said, look, we're interested in this thing. We want to buy it. So there's an old commercial going way back the 1970s where a fella named Victor Kiam, very famous fella back in the day, owned the New England Patriots. He bought Remington shavers, and he used to put a commercial on TV that said he liked the company so much that he bought it. He liked the product so much that he bought it. So we liked this product, we bought it, and then we ran it for a few years as a father-son thing, hobby. It really was a hobby. Everyone in our family's athletic and healthy, wellness-focused people. And Julia came along with lots of experience in CPG and said, you guys are doing this all wrong. So in 2019, Julia hooked up with us, and this answers your question about the origin. We shut down the whole process that we had, father and son, and we reinvented the company, and that's how we got started with GoHydrate.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Yeah. That's 2018, I think it was actually, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, we pushed pause, through market research and talking to consumers. We realized creatine was real polarizing, right? It's not an ingredient that is easy to understand. Now it's interesting. We're now seeing it kind of get some buzz and some traction back. And we have some of our OG fans kind of asking us, are you bringing this back? But, as a marketer, I realized explaining it was a mouthful, and it wasn't helping. It was hurting us more than it was helping. So we put the stop on that, and we reformulated it. And with our doctor on our board, we have a medical doctor who sits on our board of directors, reformulated the product to add vitamin D. So for those not familiar, vitamin D is essential for all humans, and most of us are deficient. And there was a gap in the marketplace that had a product like ours with a functional additive of something like vitamin D. So we've been making it as that version since 2018.
And we changed the name. So it's really important. Yeah. A lot of these things. So the name was terrible. We didn't, father son didn't have an idea how to do that. Julia comes in and says, we're changing the name. We got a much better name with GoHydrate.
Yeah.
And we can tell you the things we did. So from an operating perspective, I can go into, we did a lot of things on the operating side that your listeners are probably going to be interested in, and tell you, and then Julia can go how we build the brand, because building the brand from zero is what your listeners want to know.
Yeah, Julia, and what's been your background in consumer goods, and how did it help when you came into your brother and your father and help them revamp the brand?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I've been in the industry for nearly 15 years. I've worked large companies, Kraft, Heinz, Mars Food, and I have always had this expertise of building brands through creative storytelling and through consumer research and data. And I've been fortunate enough to work on some of the world's biggest brands on really the front lines, with my specialty being sort of new media. So I have sort of carved out this niche for myself where I really work from an integrated lens across multiple disciplines, always looking at the consumer and looking at the trends. And so that's been really, really helpful because I have this big CPG lens at which I see things, but then I'm, managing my own dollars with GoHydrate effectively. And I have to really ask, difficult questions of how this can translate to our business. Because spoiler alert, it doesn't always translate. The big CPG playbook and the startup entrepreneurial playbooks are actually very different. Yep. CPG is catching up and wanting to borrow from our playbook, I would say. So it's been a really, really interesting, few years working across both.
That's great. What were there any things that you had that were hard, kind of coming from the big CPG world, trying to initially apply it to GoHydrate, or anything you had to kind of unlearn, or lessons that you wish you would have learned quicker, trying to make that transition? Yeah, good question. First thing that comes to mind, of course, is money. As an entrepreneur and startup, we are not dealing with multi-million dollars in budgets that are coming from, a Kraft Heinz. That's just not the nature of our business. Also, people. We are a very scrappy team. My dad and I manage the business every single day, but we have an army of contractors and, freelancers that help us, but we don't have a single full-time employee. Yeah. So we don't have that you have at CPG. So that was something that we've had to bootstrap and learn, and we're in a really, really great place now. Again, we have a really great trusted team. The other thing that I've had to, we learned the hard way, I would say, and this might cause my dad some trauma, but in 2021, we did Expo West. And if for those not familiar with Expo West, it's actually coming up very soon. It is the biggest, essentially, CPG trade show in the world. It is about, a mile of food brands, drink brands, showcasing their product to people. And what can happen in startup world is you get a lot of people coming to you with a lot of opinions, and you pay them all for their opinions, and every single person tells you, this is it, this is the end all be all, you have to do it, you have to be at Expo. And my brand background was everyone's at Expo, so we built a beautiful booth. We went out to Orange County, my dad and I, we did the game, we talked the talk. And it was a big fat failure. And we were not in the right position. We were not where we should have been. And the reason why is those conferences and expos and showcases and dances are for brands that already have established retail presence. Yeah. They don't really tell you that, but what's happening at those shows is your Whole Foods buyer, for example, they're not really coming to shop. For the most part, they are coming to meet their existing customers, and they're seeing what's new. What do you got? What can you show me? They're really not coming to shop. And that was the mistake we made. So if you're listening and you're a startup, do not waste your time on Expo. It is a song and dance that you will never see an ROI until you're on shelf. And it's quite expensive too, right? To pay for the booth and get your spot.
Yeah, it is. And for us, which is not so fun, is our booth is beautiful and wonderful, but it's in our old branding. So we went through a massive rebrand in 2023, 24, and now it's essentially not helpful to us. So yeah, I know that was really painful to hear, but
we've talked to a ton of founders that share similar sentiment, mm-hmm. which is, until you're big enough, until you're ready, don't go to Expo West, or don't get enamored by spending the money up front, because you're probably not going to get a ton of new business or retail distribution just by showing up.
Nope, not going to work.
Yeah, there's kind of a theme, like when you're starting up an emerging brand, like kind of Will Nitz, who we actually had on from IQ Bar probably about a year ago, actually, kind of speaks about like kind of puzzle, like basically solving puzzles versus like waging wars. And like the big established brands have the war chest and all the dry powder. They can get into the wars of attrition, do the big activations. The emerging brands need to really focus on like what is product market fit, who's our like niche demographic, like what do we do better than anyone else, and really hone in on satisfying that group and kind of building this groundswell. And then you can kind of use that momentum then to kind of feed the growth of those bigger activations. But you have to really hedge your bets and pick kind of which thing you're going to invest in at the right time. Otherwise, it's going to be, a massive outlay with very little, if not a negative ROI.
No, it's for sure. And I think what we've really focused on as a sort of bootstrapped brand that is all self-funded, by the way, we look at sort of, let's do 80% marketing spend with what works, right? Let's scale, let's optimize 80%. Let's do 20% test. We never want to put all of our cash and money into a test, right? It's going to hurt us too much. And then we can scale, and we can also fail fast. I always say fail fast. We have to look at, did this work? Okay, it didn't, move on. Like, let's go to the next thing. Let's try the next thing. And maybe it's just going back to the basics. And right now we're in a really, interesting economic market, and we're looking at things very differently. And we're making decisions about, the future of the business and where marketing goes very, very closely and strategically, and seeing, what is going to help us in this market and climate. And, right now it's probably really a 90-10 split of 90% what's working and 10% testing to just, be smart right now.
So when you say fail fast, that probably looks a lot different with big CPG. Failing fast in like a big established conglomerate might be like, failing fast might be like 1 to 3 years.
Right.
What does failing fast look
correct.
like for failing fast in like an emerging brand? Like how fast is that? Is that monthly? Is that quarterly? And I'm sure there's some nuance here, but like how should other founders be thinking about that?
I mean, it depends on your pipeline. So for us, you can fail fast in innovation. You can fail fast in your marketing tactics. One thing that we probably have failed a little bit slow on actually is one of our flavors is not as strong as the others. And we're learning that through consumer sentiment and feedback that it's not a bestseller and it's in our best-selling box. So we're actually going to pivot, and we're going to take that out, and we're going to put something else in. And that probably took us a little bit too long. That was probably about a 2-year failure. But otherwise, a fail fast is, let's look at the influencer market, right? We work with a lot of influencers from, micro to macro, and they don't pull their weight, they're out. There's no 1-year contract. There's no, let's try it again next month. If you don't do what you're hired to do, we're not keeping you, we're not paying you. Of course, we honor our contracts and we'll pay you for your contract, but we're not extending you, and we're not going to try to see what happens next. And a lot of brands on the big CPG side, we get locked into these bigger contracts. We have people that we have to work with for a certain period of time. And, as you see things change, that partner can be a thorn in your side. It's not helping you, and you're kind of stuck.
Even with big CPG, like we would always, like, whether it's a TV creative or even like Instagram, Facebook creative, like you get enamored by the creative and you might hang on to it too long, even if it's not performing very well, or you don't have enough volume of creative that you're testing to even know if if there are better alternatives out there.
Absolutely. And we're really into A/B testing now too. And we're getting a lot smarter with that, especially with Amazon, which is a big part of our business, to A/B test. We also have an amazing growth agency that we work with that has a test farm where they're constantly churning out test content. And I'm responsible for feeding that. So I give them different UGC and creators. And, we all see as we're scrolling, very few things are going to stop us in our tracks now. I call that thumb stopping content. And it's very hard to achieve these days. And so we have to constantly be feeding it new things. Otherwise, it's just going to get stale.
I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
So the hydration category is obviously erupted. It's large. There's a ton of players. I know big companies like Unilever bought Liquid IV. There's a lot out there. When you guys were pivoting the business, how did you assess what gaps were out there, and how did you know which angle you wanted to take in the hydration market?
Yeah, I can answer this one first, and Dad, feel free to jump in. As I mentioned earlier with the creatine switch, right? We saw an opportunity for a functional beverage that tasted good first and foremost. You'd be shocked to find that a lot of these don't taste good. And through a lot of research, we find that people just drink them because they think they need to, and that's what's offered, and they don't know any better. And we went on taste. So the minute you taste us, you're hooked likely. And so that was the first thing that we found as being really important. The second was fillers and sugar and junk and excess sodium. All of these drinks for the most part, claim to be an electrolyte drink, but they have maybe 1 or 2 electrolytes. They are loaded with an ingredient called silicon dioxide, which is essentially, spoiler, sand. That's why these packets seem really full. They seem like you're getting a lot. No, you're drinking sand. There's also a ton of sugar. And then a big ingredient that is getting a lot more traction these days is sodium. So sodium is a silent killer, right? It is in everything we consume all day long, right? So when you're chugging a packet of a competitor that shall not be named, that has 500 to 1,000 milligrams of sodium when your recommended daily intake is about 2,500. So with one drink, you've had a quarter of your sodium for the day, and you're probably going to exceed. So we really worked hard to make our formula taste good, to be functional, and to be balanced. It's actually something that you can enjoy, and moms and dads and parents can feel safe to give to their kids. It's friendly for all ages. That was really, really important to us, and we feel like we've done well with that.
That's great.
So we spent a lot of money on the formulation process. We have an R&D department, and we went out there and we did taste tests, and we kept mixing stuff and throwing stuff out. It's you have to spend time on all this. It doesn't just happen.
And when you were in the early days doing all that, were you using consultants or contractors for the R&D? Did you have a contract manufacturer that you were using their R&D people? How did you go about that process for people who might be in a similar stage, just getting started now?
Okay, so this is important. This is important for your listeners. When we started, we had pretty much 2 co-mans that were handling it. We had one who was the R&D department, and they would acquire the raw materials, and then they would send the raw materials to another co-man who would blend it, and that co-man would pack it and ship it to our warehouse. So we shut down the first part, and it's all in one now. It reduces cost and it reduces hassle, because shipping the raws from one place to another is a whole lot more complicated than having the same place who's going to blend it actually order it.
Completely agree.
And formulate it so they know exactly what they're looking for. That when it comes in, they know who it's for. All this, lots less confusion. And supply chain is so confusing in many ways. This is an important feature of our company. It also cut our costs significantly.
Yeah.
So it's all in one house. There's a full-scale R&D department in this co-man. They obviously have other customers than we do. And that's been a big help for us.
Mm-hmm. And they're fast and nimble. I think that's a huge differentiator between having a co-packer and having a large CPG company. I work on innovation where it can take a year just to get a test or a sample, and we can get a sample in essentially 72 hours. So we can call them, say, hey, we want to try this flavor. Hey, we want to try this. Hey, what do we think about subbing vitamin D for this ingredient? And they do it. And that helps us go to market fast. And we have a lot of things up our sleeve because of that.
Yeah, we've doubled our flavor profiles in the last 18 to 24 months, and we're going to be adding many more flavors. But I want to make sure your audience understands, we are a DTC company. Some people are scratching their heads saying, I've never seen you in my store. We're not in the store. We don't really want to be in the store.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
We have our own DTC storefront on our website, and we have our Amazon and our Walmart.com channels.
That's great.
And the store thing, if you want to go into it, we can tell you some things about stores that your listeners might find interesting.
Yeah, and what tech stack do you guys use for your website? Are you on? I presume you're on Shopify. Is the platform?
Yeah, we've always been on Shopify. That's been our number one. We just switched to recharge subscriptions, which has been fantastic for our subscription model, which is a big part of our business as well. We use Smile Rewards, which is great for our customers to get rewarded. We've got Klaviyo is our CRM, so that's been awesome. Lots of opportunity there, and everything's really super integrated. So we've got a great tech stack. We've got a great team also that helps manage it with me. So that goes to our growth team. And then, they look at, we've just started with a new, Amazon agency as well. Hello. And, using things like Qualtrics and things like that. So getting a lot smarter and sharper with our tech stack.
That's great. Important. And obviously D2C lends itself well to failing fast and learning quickly, because you can launch something, you can get reviews, you can really see what's selling and benchmark it versus everything else you have.
Yep.
In the early days, so you did a lot of R&D work, you were working with the co-mans, you got the flavor profiles right, you used your background in consumer research. How did you kind of then prove out in those early days this is working? Like, what were the metrics when you first started selling that said, hey, this pivot's worked, we think there's heat here, and gave you enough data to continue to invest in it?
Absolutely. I would say we looked at our repeat customer rate first and foremost. We looked at reviews, right? So good and bad. We wanted to see what wasn't working, and we wanted to see what was resonating and working with consumers. And we then started to look at, okay, but back then we didn't have a subscription program. So we started to see people buying it in bulk, wanting it all the time. So, then we pivoted, okay, let's give them a subscription program. So we're looking at that, looking at churn rate on subscribers, looking at, also growth of our social channels. Are people finding us? Are they engaging with us? A lot of our early days and still is through word of mouth and influencer marketing. So we've run massive influencer campaigns. And that's a lot of people have found us and tried us. We also have run big sampling events. We're local to Chicago, so we've really sort of tried to get that community to find us and love us. And, we spent many a day in fitness studios sampling and getting people to try us and taste us, because as I said before, and I'll keep saying, is like, it tastes really freaking good. And if it tastes really good, you're going to want to drink it. And if you're going to drink it a lot, you're going to buy it a lot. So, that was hugely important to have people try us and sample it, because we try it, we love it. But if you don't love it and you're a consumer, you're not going to buy it. So
that's great.
Yeah.
I think on that topic of social proof, obviously, I think we're absolutely in the era of like access and information and social credibility with influencers and social. What's been some of the biggest findings for you on the influencer side in terms of like how are you sourcing and vetting the right influencers for your brand at the right stage? And actually, I think a lot of people don't think about like the appropriate sampling budget around that. And actually, the influencer briefs to turn one piece of UGC into like 10. It's like, what have been some of the levers there? Because I think a lot of brands are trying to figure this out right now in the wake of like TikTok Shop and all these other affiliate channels that are really blowing up.
Oh, wow. That could be an entire podcast. But what I will say is that has been the biggest learning and the biggest growth driver for us at the same time. So, we used to run a massive influencer marketing campaign every single month, spending 5 figures a month on influencers. And for a long time, it worked. This is what was working. We had many posts. It was all stories based. I will say, if you're considering influencer marketing, make it as easy for the consumer as possible. And that is a story, because they can click and buy right from there. And so that's what we did. We ran these massive programs, and we would, like I said, we would do 80% of influencers that worked, 20% we would test. And we had some big failures in testing, and we had failures that cost a lot of money. And, they were people that if names you would know. And the point is, getting that top talent isn't always going to convert. It feeds parts of your funnel and it feeds traffic and that stuff, but it may not convert. And for us, like we said, conversion is key, and having people actually buy and try it. So that was really fascinating for us. And then, about 12 to 18 months ago, we started noticing a shift. We started seeing influencers convert less and less and less. And, there's obviously macro trends going on. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world. And I think people are being a lot more cautious. And so we as a brand are also being a lot more cautious. So right now, our influencer program is very different. It is working with only a select few at a time to make our dollars work harder for us, and seeing, how that can work. But with an influencer program, you have to look at it as, yes, it's an ROI driver, and it can be a direct conversion, channel for you. It's also awareness. It's also getting other people to look and see your brand and understand who you are. But it has to also be the right look and feel. Like I said before, thumb stopping content. A lot of influencer content is not necessarily going to stop you in your tracks. So we're learning certain hooks and ways that we can get people to care about us, frankly, because there's a lot of people out there now. So you've got to be very smart with your influencer program. And just because somebody has 100,000 followers does not mean they're going to convert. You've got to be smarter than that.
How hands-on are you guys with the toolkits that you give them? Obviously, you're sending them samples that they can use in their content, but are you giving them example scripts, example hooks, example content that they can use? Like how granular or detailed do you recommend people get when they're giving toolkits to influencers, and how much leeway do you give to the influencer?
Depends on who the influencer is. So like I said, we work with some of our friendlies every single month, and they know our brand inside and out. We don't even actually review their content anymore, which is wonderful. It's a great place to be. They're an extension of our brand. They know how to talk about us. They know what to do, and it converts. Other people right now, I'm actually, working on testing some new partners, much more hands-on. They get a full brief from me. I talk them through our brand, who we are, our brand guidelines. And to your point, I also talk them through different hooks. So we have an entire deck that we share of winning hooks and winning things to talk about and examples, so they can see, like, this is the tone we're going for. This is the vibe. We don't want you to be, reading off of a script. We don't want you to be in a dark room. Like, it has to feel very organic and natural. And so, early new influencers, very prescriptive. Our friendlies and OGs, they can essentially do whatever they want because it works.
That's great. And I think just to reiterate that for our audience, I think a lot of people think influencer is, you send them product and then it just converts, but it's not always that way. I think the level of detail that you're citing is really the level of rigor that needs to go in to get the most out of influencers. And like you said, they're not all going to work, but the more you can set them up for success, the better shot you have. Because a lot of people will send product out and then be like, this influencer program failed. But when you really peel back the onion, they didn't really give them a ton of guidance, or the content that got created wasn't very good. And it's really on the brand owner or whoever's driving it to make sure that you're getting the most out of your influencers.
Absolutely. I mean, you think about it, these people, it's their job to influence and create content. So they've got 15 other brands they're working on. So for you, your brand is your number one, but for them, it's not the number one. So they need to know exactly what you're looking for it to be successful.
Great.
Yeah. And I think another trend that we see with kind of emerging and challenger brands is just like the cognitive burden, right? So every fire is on your shoulders. You don't have this team to distribute to. You can't delegate to anyone else. It's you. Mm-hmm. So how do you balance working on the business and in the business simultaneously to make sure that you're pushing it forward, but not getting so sucked in and getting tunnel vision that you're still kind of keeping abreast of like where the new developments and new market entrants?
That's a great question. My dad and I, we're very lucky to work together. And I think we're in a really unique position where he's not a boss per se, and he's not some scary figurehead at your company that you need to go have a scary conversation with and prep for. It's my dad. So we can have pretty real conversation and we're able to actually talk through stuff and have challenging conversations. And we do a very good job of sort of level setting each other on, this is the reality, this is what's going on, and sort of bringing each other kind of back down if we're spiraling on something, because we can have that really off the cuff informal conversation. But I always say, in order to be a good marketer, you never stop learning and being a student of the world. And I say that in twofold. Like, you have to be reading the trades and you have to be seeing what's out there. I took it a step further and even got my master's in integrated marketing because I just couldn't get enough. But you have to take it a step further and you have to actually consume things. So I always say I am a consumer as well. And, I'm buying things that I see. I'm testing our competitors. I'm following the influencers that are out there. I'm looking at the trends because I need to understand what's happening to the market. I always joke that my job is my phone and my job is social media. I have to see what's happening, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to apply it. You can't spend so much time in the business that you're not around the business and in the world that it exists in. So it's very important.
That's great. And just kind of another question on that. From when you got started and kind of proved out the business to now, I imagine some of your marketing mix has changed. I'm assuming it's probably pretty heavy Meta, maybe Google, maybe some TikTok, probably heavy Amazon advertising. How has it changed over the years? And are there any channels that you're particularly excited about now or that you're doubling down on?
Ooh, good question. Like I said, we've really been steady with our mix because it's worked and we've taken on very little risk with things. The influencer space, as I mentioned, has changed a lot, and we've dialed down significantly on that. And we've channeled that money into the business, into innovation, and into Meta. One channel that was really fascinating for us that kind of fell flat was TikTok. So another thing, everyone, TikTok. You've got to be on TikTok. If you're not on TikTok, everything's going to end. And we tried, and we had great content. We had a great team doing it, and it was not working. And so we said, okay, we're not going to keep this as part of our channel. We're going to put that money back into Meta. But Meta is also changing all the time. So we are constantly evaluating our channels and seeing what is going to work for us, But at the end of the day, we're hyper focused on performance marketing. We're hyper focused on conversion driving tactics. If we don't see ROI or conversion, it is a much bigger risk for us. We recently were just evaluating a large scale sponsorship that we ultimately said no to because it would have been further away from us from a conversion, and we're not there yet. And that's okay. I think as a brand, it's okay to not be ready for everything. And that is also a big piece of learning. Like I said, you will have people come at you from every single angle telling you this is where your money has to go. This is the thing. This is the end all be all. And I'm here to say it's not. And you have to do what's best for your dollars, because if you're, doing a million things and you have no control over what's happening, it is going to be very difficult to evaluate.
Yeah, and I think that's good observation, especially on the TikTok piece. I mean, James, how many people have we had on now? I think one has had outsized success on TikTok. Almost everybody else we talked to has not had the same level of success or any at all. I sit on the board of a couple companies. I would say in everyone we talk to, it still goes back to most people are succeeding with Meta and Amazon advertising. Mm-hmm. Some succeed with TikTok. There are a variety of factors there. Some of it, I think, might be a little bit of luck too. Mm-hmm. And then Google seems to be challenging as more people are always searching on Amazon and less on Google, for at least the CPG product companies that we're talking to.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair.
Yeah, we're trying to monitor this as an agency currently right now, and kind of what is the role that TikTok plays in the overall marketplaces, and how does that have halo effect? There is going to be with Amazon next month where they're actually integrating with TikTok, and we're going to see in-feed banner ads that can now drive traffic from TikTok Shop to Amazon. So now anyone that's been hesitant, I think now a lot of brands are going to be reevaluating. So it's really interesting on the agency perspective where we're trying to lead activations, but then we have to pull back, but then a new development comes up. So now we have to go test it again. So it's exciting. Want to pull your hair out sometimes, trying to keep on top of these things, but always a moving target with TikTok.
It is, but we're lucky to have a great agency to help us through it. So
hey, happy to be there.
Yeah.
Well, I love. There's always I love different unique angles. A couple trends with other founders that we've had. Shark Tank alums, we've had veterans, we've had people that have gone through exit or liquidity events prior and come on, and you are our first family duo combo on the podcast. So for some families, family business can be really tough and difficult. I know Mike is really intense and just a real driver.
Very, yeah.
I'm kidding, but Mike, want to hear from you. What's it like building with your family? As a dad, my kids are 4 and 6. Sean's got 3 kids, all young. But how is it to see your kid grow up, over the course of 30 plus years, and then get to build something with them now?
There's nothing better. It's pretty much the easy answer. The one thing you can do when you're working with one of your kids is they're not kids, they're full-grown adults, but their family is you trust them. And if we have a problem or there's some priorities that we need to focus on, I don't have to repeat myself. I've managed hundreds of people in the corporate world in my life, and repeating myself was kind of a regular function of getting the message out. Here, the message is the same for both of us because Julia owns the company. There's nothing more connecting between the managers and the company than ownership.
100%.
And we both own it, so it's everything we do matters.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, we get into battles because I will cut off something that's not generating returns on investment in 5 seconds. And Julia's like, give it some time. And so I've learned a lot from her. I know nothing. I'm the original Sergeant Schultz here. I know nothing about CPG. And now I've learned a lot. Now I read every trade magazine, every possible sort of consultant summaries and reviews on what's going on in the industry. And I just can't get enough of it. And that's all because Julia taught me sort of the ropes.
Well,
That's
vice
awesome.
versa. Like I said, I always say it's worked with us is because we're the yin and the yang. His background is not mine and mine is not his. And so the learning goes both ways. When I was in grad school and taking accounting courses and sharpening my financial acumen, he was the biggest resource and help. And it also was for me those aha moments of like, oh, this isn't that confusing or complicated. I can speak both sides now, right? And now I'm really interested in finance and I'm interested in what's happening with the numbers. And so we've really been able to share and to learn. But yeah, there's been battles. It's not just like sunshine and roses because it's my dad. Like there's still difficult conversations, but at the end of the day, like we're so invested emotionally and financially too that it's everything is for the business. And we've gotten really sharp and smart at making decisions that if it doesn't drive the business forward, it will not happen. And it took a lot of time and some failures to get there though. But it's been the biggest joy of my life. I didn't think I would ever be able to work with my dad and have that and grow a company and be successful. And it's been incredible. I feel so lucky and fortunate to be able to do that.
That's great. And we'll probably end on this one, but one thing we always ask people was, in your entire journey, was there ever that kind of oh shit moment where you didn't know if the company was going to make it, or something that you thought was unrecoverable that you were able to overcome?
Oh,
So the we're not going to make it thing, knock on wood, has never come up because we don't leverage the company. We don't have lots of employees. We don't have huge payroll to make. Everybody's on contract. So if we have a problem, we have 30 days to get out, and we don't want overhead. No beanbag chairs, no ping pong tables, none of that. No offices. So everything goes into building the company and making it available to our customers. All we care about is our customer gets what they want, and we have enough of it to give them. We sell out a lot, and that's, other challenge in managing a CPG is making enough to anticipate demand. And so we deal with that. But Julia can give you a few aha moments, but we've never had the almost failure moment.
That's great.
No almost failures. I mean, of course, COVID was a hard time for everybody, but we, like we mentioned, our supply chain is so shipshape that we were able to work through that very well. But that was still not oh crap, we're going under moment, hang on. But we've had, like I said, small failures. We've had those big influencers that have just been like a complete bomb when all signs pointed to they would be successful. And those are tough hits because those are expensive influencers that we're paying cash and we got nothing from them. That's a really hard pill to swallow. When every single dollar is accounted for. Big CPG can absorb that easily. They don't care, but we don't absorb that as easily. I would also say, the right partners is key. We've had some failures in who we've worked with. We've had people we've trusted that we shouldn't have trusted. We've had learnings there. And so we keep a very, very close group of people that we work with. We evaluate every conversation very, very closely. You know, everybody wants to come take your money. Every single person wants to come try to sell you some big idea, say that they're the magic piece to your puzzle, and you know they're going to take you to the moon. And you have to have a very, very strong bullshit meter in this business. Forgive my French there, but like I cannot stress that enough. I can count. I don't have enough fingers and toes to count on how many times that meter has gone through the roof, and it is like get away as fast as possible. But some have snuck in, you know, and that's the reality. Some have snuck in. We've had to learn the hard way on those conversations. And but being what's I think the best part of all of that is that it's our family, it's our business, it is my dad I'm talking to at the end of the day. And there's no sugarcoating those conversations, and it's you're on the same page. So we're very fortunate to keep growing and grow fast, and to keep building the business the way that we've been able to.
Good. Well, Mike, Julia, thank you so much. This was I enjoyed working with you both, and then also just great conversation today. I think you gave a lot of just a lot of value added nuggets in here that I think people that are trying to navigate the same territory, maybe a few steps behind you all, that I think you can help lend them in their path and their journey to kind of building their brands out. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Our pleasure. Thanks for having us, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys. And I'll end with this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll end with this that I always say, James and I don't monetize this podcast, so we do it purely for our learning. We enjoy the conversations, and we want to share the knowledge with all of our listeners. So if you found this valuable today, please share it with your colleagues, your friends, your family. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, or generally wherever you're going to get your podcasts. And thank you for joining today. And thanks, Mike and Julia, for being great guests.
Our pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Great. Thank you, guys.